Hello, glad you can join us. Here's what we have for you this Thursday. Relief and disbelief as Israel and Hamas sign phase one of a ceasefire deal. The next steps and the cautious hope for peace.
We will protect also the autonomy of Quebec.
While Quebec is unveiling its own controversial constitution.
I think they can go all the way.
It's the team of destiny.
The Blue Jays have done it.
Plus the field day as the Jays soar to the Final Four.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo.
Laughter, tears, anticipation, jubilation in Israel after agreement is reached on the first phase of a ceasefire plan, including the swift release of all the hostages. And in Gaza, scenes of joy and soon a surge of desperately needed aid flowing in as the Israeli military begins preparations to partially withdraw. Well, it took a village to get here, including mediators from Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey, and there's still a lot more to be signed off on, including who will govern Gaza. But today is about breathing a sigh of relief. CTV senior correspondent Heather Wright now on the jubilation and the 20-point peace plan that led to this moment. Heather.
Sandy, 2 ceasefire deals have crumbled during this 2-year war, but there is cautious optimism that this one will last and that hostages will return home and people in Gaza can begin the monumental task of rebuilding.
Standing on top of emergency vehicles, paramedics in Gaza City celebrate the first step toward peace. Honestly, these are indescribable feelings, this man says. We can't believe it. At Hostage Square in Tel Aviv, dancing and singing. Hope that finally the hostages will soon be home.
This is the joy that we are waiting for.
While many important details still need to be ironed out, the first phase of this truce will see all remaining Israeli hostages freed in exchange for hundreds of Palestinians being held in Israeli jails. Israeli forces will also withdraw to an agreed-upon line.
The next 48 hours are crucial. We urge the parties, particularly Hamas, to follow through, release all the hostages.
Many questions still remain, with the more contentious elements of a long-term deal yet to be agreed to, including Israeli demands that Hamas disarm and the complete withdrawal of Israeli troops from the enclave.
When they disarm, whether Israel withdraws sufficiently to send a signal to Hamas that they can disarm. Those are the questions going forward.
In the meantime, Israel is preparing hospitals to receive the hostages once they are released after more than 730 days in captivity. Palestinians hopeful that once the bombing stops, they can begin to rebuild their lives. A daunting task with an estimated 2 million people displaced, according to the United Nations, and much of the enclave reduced to rubble.
What we need, of course, is humanitarian supplies. We need food, we need water, hygiene, tents, equipment for the winter to support people in this new phase of the response.
U.S. President Donald Trump says the 48 remaining hostages will be released on either Monday or Tuesday, 20 of whom are still believed to be alive. Sandy.
Okay, CTV's Heather Wright. Well, today accolades are pouring in for the U.S. president for his role in helping to drive this phase of the deal. CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbon is with us now. Okay, Joy, take us through how the Americans were able to make this happen.
Well, Sandy, this is a president who does things very differently. Through sheer force of will and might of the United States, Donald Trump used his leverage to lean on Israel's prime minister, forcing Benjamin Netanyahu to apologize for the strike on Qatar, bringing them back to the negotiating table. And Trump, his son-in-law Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff marshaled support from Arab partners through the Abraham Accords that normalized relations with Israel. Now, all this helped to pressure Hamas, who had very few cards to play. But for Donald Trump, it has always been about returning the hostages home. Have a listen.
We are getting the hostages back on Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday, and that'll be a day of joy. I'm going to try and make a trip over. We're going to try and get over there. And we're working on the timing, the exact timing. We're going to go to Egypt, where we'll have a signing.
Okay, Joy, there's still the full framework of the plan, which Heather referred to in her report, and that includes disarming Hamas and the post-war governance of Gaza. So where does all of that stand?
Well, yeah, Sandy, this is just phase one, and there are many outstanding issues. But the president is ever optimistic. Today, he's already talking about rebuilding Gaza, forming a so-called Council of Peace to help govern. As for Palestinian statehood, President Trump said he had no view on it or whether Hamas would even be involved. But here's what the president had to say.
There will be disarming. There will be pullbacks. There will be a lot of things that are happening. You know, I gave you a whole list of 22 different things that will take place, and I think it'll take place, and I think you're going to end up with peace in the Middle East. But we have to get our hostages back.
Sandy, Donald Trump isn't very subtle about his desire for the Nobel Peace Prize, but if this peace deal holds, many argue he's got a legitimate claim to it. Sandy?
Okay, Joy, thank you. Well, world leaders welcome news of the plan. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer praised Donald Trump for his work on the negotiations.
It is a relief to the world, and I think particularly of the hostages who've been held a very long time and their families, and to all the civilians in Gaza.
Cet accord, après 2 années de calvaire insupportable.
French President Emmanuel Macron called the Gaza Accord historic, while the UN says it shows the power of diplomacy.
Let it be a reminder that the solutions to conflicts are not found on the battlefields.
Russia's Vladimir Putin says he supports efforts to stop the bloodshed. Officials in Iran also welcomed the agreement, but say the Palestinian people must decide their own fate. And Canada's Prime Minister also congratulated the U.S. President for his leadership. Now, it is still unclear what Mark Carney accomplished on his Tuesday trip to Washington to meet with Donald Trump, although a comment by the U.S. Secretary of Commerce initially sent a chill across the border. CTV senior political correspondent Mike LeCouture now on reaction in Ottawa today. Hey, Mike.
Well, Sandy, a day after the American Commerce Secretary said Canada must come second to the U.S. in the auto sector, Canadian lawmakers and car makers insist the industry isn't in danger.
They don't ask, is it Canadian or American? They said, can we ship it by Tuesday?
At a Senate Committee on Foreign Affairs, Canadian automotive groups tried to calm the waters. The head of the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association says Howard Lutnick's comments are just posturing.
We know that we need each other. We have an integrated supply chain. Canada is the most important market for the U.S. auto manufacturing sector. So we should expect these ups and downs through the next few weeks.
The U.S. currently has a 25% tariff on Canadian-made cars, with a carve-out for the U.S. elements in those vehicles. However, the Canadian auto parts industry says their American counterparts are lobbying the White House.
Those Canadian assembly plants buy $25 billion worth of parts from our factories every year, and you're hurting us.
The Ford Motor Company reported that tariffs will cost it about $2 billion U.S. this year. General Motors lost $1.1 billion in the second quarter. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says the Prime Minister isn't standing up for the industry.
He's accepting second place for Canadian auto workers and continuing tariffs on our finished products.
The federal finance minister disagrees, saying the Carney government is fighting for the auto sector and its workers.
I see ourselves, when I say that, Canada and the U.S. more as complementary than in real competition.
That argument is likely being made by the Minister of Canada-U.S. Trade, Dominic LeBlanc, who remains in Washington to continue talks with his American counterparts. Sandy?
Okay, Mike, thank you. Also today, the Liberals presented a new industrial strategy to address the downside of tariffs. A tall order, but one that Minister Joly laid out to a packed audience of business leaders. CTV's Rachel Aiello now on the plan and the potential pitfalls. Rachel.
Sandy, today, Industry Minister Melanie Joly said the federal government has a vision to bring Canada into a new industrial era. It's a three-pronged strategy: protect tariff sectors, create new jobs, and draw in global investment and talent by building up key Canadian industries.
We know that we can build the best ships, the best planes, the best drones, and have very strong supply chains across the country. We can have researchers, engineers, and welders at work. We will use the power of procurement to create jobs. Because ultimately what I've learned is companies rather have contracts than subsidies from the government.
Detailing how she and Prime Minister Mark Carney plan to make this happen, Joly said Ottawa will leverage the new Buy Canadian edict to source domestic goods such as lumber and steel for future home building and defense contracts. And approving major projects will fuel growth in the critical mineral and energy sectors. Though experts are already cautioning strategies like this can go sideways quickly, and the key challenge will be how it's executed. The minister, tapping into her time as Canada's top diplomat, also said she wants to see Canadian companies become bigger, not only to solidify Canada's sovereignty, but to increase this country's soft power and influence abroad. Sandy?
Okay, CTV's Rachel Aiello. Thanks, Rachel. A move by Quebec's government today to table a draft constitution symbolically called Bill 1. Now, it's meant to affirm the province's national distinct nature, but not everyone approves. CTV's Quebec Bureau Chief Geneviève Beauchemin now on the law called the Law of Laws and why there's objections to it.
Yes, Andy, the government calls this proposed constitution both a mirror reflecting Quebec values, but also a shield protecting its identity. The opposition calls it political theater.
Le Québec se donne enfin sa propre constitution.
Premier François Legault says generations of Quebecers have held the fort, but now his government has tabled a draft of the proposed constitution that he says enshrines Quebec's distinct national character.
That's a tool inside the Canadian Federation to be sure to protect the autonomy of Quebec.
Among the province's founding principles, it lists the equality of men and women that supersedes religious freedoms, French as the official language, and rejection of Canadian multiculturalism in favor of a national integration model. It also states that Quebec has no attachment to the monarchical system and that the province's lieutenant governor should be called Officer of Quebec instead. A constitution is the supreme law of the land, and as long as Quebec is part of Canada, that's Canada's constitution, says the Parti québécois.
There's no law that is stronger than the interpretation of the Canadian Constitution. That is not changing because the CQ, in last resort, throw a simple law and they put the name Constitution on it.
Among some constitutional experts, there's concern over one provision, that the Constitution would stop publicly funded institutions like universities from using taxpayer money on court battles.
The Superior Court of Quebec, I'm telling you, will say, well, too bad, you're still living in Canada. And in Canada, you cannot suspend the right to challenge the constitutionalities of law.
Opposition parties say there has been too little public consultation for a constitution that should be by the people, for the people.
Vive le Québec.
Quebec says the Constitution would enshrine the rights of First Nations, but also respect the rights of Anglophone communities. Sandy.
All right, Jen, thank you. Coming up after the break, when the boys of summer become the heroes of fall.
This is very exciting for me.
I'm inspired.
Covering all the bases as the Jays advance again. Plus, biting into a surprise sighting off the coast of Canada. Well, if you're a baseball fan, we don't have to tell you that the Toronto Blue Jays have advanced to the American League Championship Series for the first time in a decade after beating the Yankees yesterday in the Bronx. A time to celebrate, which is why we've reached out to CTV's Rahim Ladani, who's at Toronto's Rogers Centre. Hey, Rahim, you know, any action, any fans milling about in Blue Jays home turf?
Hey, Sandy, certainly more than just a few Blue Jays fans. In fact, I think it's safe to say the Jays shop is the most popular attraction in the city today. We have been seeing droves of fans with bags of merchandise. Everybody wants the same hat and the same T-shirt that the players were wearing on the field last night when they defeated the New York Yankees en route to their first ALCS since 2016. A lot of fans are pumped. This is, if you're a sports fan, this is what you live for, to see your team make a deep postseason run. And so everybody wants to be a part of that. And I think it's a little little extra special, the fact that the Jays did it against the Yankees in the Bronx, popping champagne on their home turf. Certainly fans are feeling good about themselves. In fact, this is a moment not just for the team, but for the fans, for the entire city. And as one woman I spoke with says, she said the Jays are connecting the entire country.
Oh, that's for sure. No doubt about that. So what's next? Give us a timeline.
So the Jays have a bit of a lull here now. They have a few days off to rest and recuperate. They still don't know who they're going to be playing in the ALCS. It's either going to be the Detroit Tigers or the Seattle Mariners. We will get that result on Friday night. What we do know is that game 1 and 2 of the ALCS will be played here at the Rogers Centre on Sunday and Thanksgiving Monday. Tickets, they've already been sold out. No surprise there, I'm sure. So you have to go to the resale market if you want those. However, the City of Toronto did just announce that they'll be holding viewing parties just outside across the street. And so everyone will have a chance to experience and take part in the Blue Jays festivities, and the Jays have a lot more playoff baseball to go, Sandy.
That's for sure. Okay, Raheem, thank you so much. CTV's Raheem Ladani in Toronto. And by the way, we're not done yet with the Jays. Later in this newscast, what Americans think about Canada's win, right? You'll find that interesting. Okay, as we head to break, one of the biggest great white sharks ever found in the Atlantic Ocean has made its way from Florida to Atlantic Canada. The huge mammal weighs more than 700 kilograms and stretches 4 meters from nose to tail. It was discovered in the Gulf of St. Lawrence off of Labrador on September the 29th. Now, marine experts say the shark is gorging on seals for a winter return to Florida.
I'm Sarah Plowman in St. John. Coming up on CTV National News, re-entry denied. How a man who says he's American finds himself stuck in Canada.
I want to go home.
Why the USA won't let him back in. Coming up on CTV National News.
A death in Canada's boxing family. The son of Arturo Gatti, the former world champion from Montreal, has been found dead. 17-year-old Arturo Gatti Jr. was discovered in an apartment in Mexico. The World Boxing Council confirmed the death on social media. Gatti's father was the 10th Canadian boxer to be inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. He died under mysterious circumstances in Brazil at the age of 37, Brazil ruling his death a suicide. Now, a man who claims to be an American citizen has been barred from returning to the U.S. and is in limbo in New Brunswick. Terrence McBride says he was born in Canada and then adopted by Americans. Border officials are not convinced. CTV's Sarah Plowman reports.
Terrence McBride is stuck in St. John and drained like his bank account. Trouble that started after he pulled up to the U.S. border in Calais, Maine in April, trying to head home to Georgia.
I pulled in. Here, this is who I am. Are you an American citizen? Yes, I am. Where's your documents?
He says he was detained for a day and a half. The 63-year-old was born in Canada but adopted by American parents as a baby. He says he's American but has a Canadian passport. The adoption records and documents he brought to the border weren't enough.
I spent my whole life assuming I'm American. A couple of times I've crossed the border and they've said, hey, just so you know, you might need some stuff the next time you, but no big deal. Suddenly it's a big deal.
McBride says officials told him not to try to cross into the U.S. again until he gets a U.S. passport or his citizenship number. As he tried to make calls to dig up the files needed, he had a heart attack.
I thought I was dying. I just thought it was stress. I laid there for 2 days on the bathroom floor.
For nearly 6 months, he's lived in hotels, his truck, and now this rooming house. He's had to give up his dog, is without work. He's fundraising to hire a U.S. immigration lawyer to help.
I want to go home. They're the people that make me feel valued enough, loved, appreciated, thought of. I want to go there because I don't have that. I don't have that here.
Kelly Ortega is a U.S. immigration lawyer. While McBride is not her client, she suggests he could file a Freedom of Information Act request to get what he needs.
While he may very well have either green card status or even American citizen status, it's his responsibility to bear that evidence when he seeks entry.
All of it takes time and money.
It's just chiseling away at my heart. And my heart's breaking.
We reached out to U.S. Customs and Border Protection for a comment, but did not receive one before our deadline. Sandy.
Sarah Plowman in Fredericton. After the break, yanking down some Major League hopes, how fans stateside are coping with the loss to the Jays. You have to wonder how New Yorkers are handling the fact the Jays have eliminated their beloved Yankees and secured a spot in baseball's Final Four. We understand some are taking it well, others not so much. It's why we asked CTV's John Valley-Rao to sample what Americans are saying after Toronto's big win.
On America's Fox Sports, as they watched the Canadian team celebrate, there came the moment of pure joy for Jays fans. The Yankee lose! Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and slugging legend David Ortiz, repeatedly ribbing panelists Derek Jeter and Alex Rodriguez, both Yankees legends.
Hey, let's do it again. The Yankees lose!
Fox 5's Richard Giacovis is live in the...
Earlier on a local Fox News station, the reporter expressed surprise as Yankees fans streamed out of the stadium before the game ended.
I think we could say this is over. I've never seen a mass exodus like this.
You like losing? While on the Talkin' Yanks podcast, the hosts couldn't have looked more disheartened. Summed up by this play on the Boys of Summer that was a headline in the New York Post.
The Blue Jays were better and kicked their ass.
On New York-based WFAN Radio, callers acknowledged the Jays played well, and the host posting this message.
Just watching Vladimir Guerrero Jr. celebrate, good for him, he deserves it. He's not the fraud. The Yankees are the frauds. This offense was a fraud.
It's really a masterclass.
Rodriguez noting the Jays came in last place in their division last year, but made a remarkable turnaround, what some in New York thought was a fluke heading into the playoffs.
They came into New York saying, oh, so you guys all think that this was a fluke. And over 4 games, they showed they were the better team, they were better prepared, and they played better.
As for how the Jays will fare going forward,
how do you like their chances right now?
I love their chances.
While Yankees Nation hearing the line, sports fans in Toronto are so accustomed to hearing.
As you said, there's always next season. Hope springs eternal.
John Valley-Rao, CTV News, Toronto.
Thank you for sharing your time with us. I'm Sandy Ronaldo. Bye for now. Your local CTV News is coming up.